going live on YouTube. Hopefully I won't have the feedback issues that I've had every meeting so far, because I hope I've got the speaker situation in the right order.
Great stuff.
So, over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so welcome to all those who are able to join us at this Town Council meeting. Before I introduce my councillors, I'd like to say that as well practiced as we are now at these meetings, we may be subject to an occasional technical glitch, and I apologise if this occurs, but we are in the very capable hands of our town clerk. I'd like to remind my councillors, please refrain from gulping wine and avoid standing up just in case they've forgotten to change out of their pyjamas. I'd personally like to wish Councillor Hogan a speedy recovery after falling ill a couple of weeks ago. And I'd like to take this opportunity to now introduce my councillors. I would like to just call out your names. If you raise a hand, ladies and gentlemen, just to acknowledge, that would be fine. I'll start with our town clerk, Alexa Collins. My councillors, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Pike. We're still awaiting a few, and we haven't got Councillor Cramner here, I don't think, at the moment. Councillor Saunders.
Good evening, all.
Councillor Schofield.
Good evening. Merry Christmas.
Councillor Jackson.
Hello. Good evening.
Councillor Owen.
Good evening.
Councillor Reid, who is unable to show himself, unfortunately. He does not have a camera attached to his device. And we don't seem to have Councillor Foster. So I think, has that covered everything, Clark? Councillor Basterman.
Hi.
Good evening, Philip.
Okay.
And we're still awaiting a few councillors, and as they come in, I can introduce them. So let's get started. So we'll start with the first item, which is apologies for absence, please.
I have apologies from Patrick Hogan, as you've already alluded to. So well.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, please. Okay. If you find that there isn't a subject that comes up in hand, even though we've read the agenda and there shouldn't be anything outside of that agenda, then just let us know if you realise that there's something that you have an interest in. We'll move on to public questions, and we have been contacted by the Beaconsfield Drinking Fountain Group, Peter Saunders and Deborah Saunders. Good evening. I'm going to read out the questions which they've asked, but I'll just tell you a little bit about this little group. I'm sure most of you know now. The little group headed by Debbie and Peter Saunders is in the last stages of successfully putting together plans for a drinking refill station, water fountain outside Waitrose on the town green. This will help with the plastic-free Beaconsfield initiative, which we're trying to push, and they're working very hard at trying to enable this to happen. They've had many hurdles, and especially with COVID and the need to keep areas sanitised, and they've been doing a lot of research. I know this because I've been on their little meetings, and where possible, I've tried to help. Their first question is, in view of the fact that the Town Council will be maintaining the fountain in the future, will the Town Council enter into a dialogue with our group to agree the type of fountain which will be installed? I would answer this, and I'm happy to have questions from my councillors. Yes, most definitely, and I will be getting back to you on the design of the drinking fountain being installed in the Old Town. It's one of the questions you asked me earlier at the meeting, which I didn't respond to. As you're aware, we've put together plans for dementia-friendly toilets as well. So with those in hand, excuse me one second, just got my tenant leaving. Right, okay, sorry about that. We've got the dementia-friendly toilets being installed in the Old Town. It's an exciting initiative, and there will be a drinking fountain installed there. Once I've got those diagrams, we can then share, because it's a slightly different setup. It's going in a different area. It's being built, I believe, into the wall. Clark.
It's just to say that what we're going to do up there is more of a bottle filler than a drinking fountain, because again, we would have followed your example, but with the changes through with COVID, it seems that a bottle filler would be a more hygienic way of doing it. So that's what's been suggested to us, but we're happy to share that information and see what you think, and if the designs are compatible, then maybe we'll buy two and put one in each.
Do you have any preference for a bottle filler or one with a drinking
bit attached in the new town?
I think that leads on to your question about us being involved with your design, Deborah, and certainly looking at your plans. You've got, reading through your emails trail, so I've noticed that you are thinking about changing designs as developments move on, and looking at the Marlow drinking fountains as well, seeing what they've provided, which are bottle fillers, aren't they?
Yeah.
At this point, bottle fillers, for me personally, seems like a preference in these present times, and we were thinking of an initiative of perhaps supplying reclaimed plastic bottles that can be used if necessary, but the whole idea is to keep refilling your same bottle, if you agree. But we're still, obviously you've still got your designs coming forward, haven't you? Because looking at the Marlow designs, they were quite interesting. Did you have any comments on that?
We wanted one that was going to be for drinking and bottle filling, but we are concerned with the COVID restrictions that bottle fillers are going to be better. But we really want the councillors' view on this as well.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. So I'm happy to take questions on that from the rest of the councillors if they have any. Just going back to the Marlow design and looking at their design of fountain, it was interesting to read that they've had to take insurance out, and that part of the insurance condition was it gets cleaned 3 times a week to sanitize it in this present situation. That could be quite a costly exercise. So let's hope that when it is finalized, that this pandemic will be over with and we won't have to be quite so careful on having to keep it clean. Any questions to?
Can I just say one thought? That is,
sorry, who's
we've
talking?
currently been working on the project for just over 2 years. Hopefully, in 6 months' time, COVID-19 will begin to be history, and therefore the option might be to review the situation in time.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Any other questions to Peter and Deborah? No. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I would just say that you know that really you've been studying, Deborah. You've been looking at this and Peter been looking at this a couple of years. So you know, not saying we'll be led by you. We can, if you give us all the information, and you know, obviously we can look at it. But I'm sure that I almost trust your judgment. But you know, I'm quite willing to have a look at it. But I'm sure you'll be right.
Thank you, Chris. The second question was: are the town council aware?
Alistair Pike.
Sorry, Councillor Pike, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that if there is flexibility here, then clearly that would be a preferred option. So, I mean, if you've got the Marlow option, which looks like a combination of water refill or a fountain, then if you can incorporate both features, but only actually activate one during the current restrictions, that would be the best way to go, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? At this point, I'd like to introduce Councillor Corney and Councillor Shaw. Thank you for joining us. I hope the party went well, Philip's party went well. So let's move on to the second question, which pretty much we've sort of already touched on, which was, are the Town Council aware that Marlow Town Council, despite the COVID-19 restrictions, has recently funded and installed a drinking station? In answer to that, I was not aware of this and was interested to read your email trail, Peter and Deborah. I hope that it's given you some useful help towards the installation process. It certainly seems to be good reading. I did read that, is it Ian Fowler? Gosh, terrible, yes. Interesting enough, noticed that it had actually been put forward before COVID. So they were pretty much well into the installation process. So that's made your job a lot harder. They had already almost got there, but hence why I think they're having to do this clean 3 times a week, because they'd built something that wasn't perhaps so COVID friendly. Anyway, well, nobody wants to be a friend of COVID. I'll rephrase that. Anyway, any questions on that comment about Marlow? We did touch on it a little bit. I'm trying to look at you all.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for joining us, Peter and Deborah, and I hope that's
Thank
helped
you.
a little bit, and I look forward to the next meeting with you, and look forward to getting this fountain installed next year at some point.
Thank you.
Yes, we hope to have it done this year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on, we now move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Clark, can I hand over to you on this, as there's a few to view?
You can do, but it's just to present the minutes of the last meeting and ask if they are an accurate reflection.
So this is the minutes of the last town council meeting in September. Okay, I'd like to present the minutes of the last town council meeting, please, to the councillors. And if you have any comments, please raise your hands. Okay.
Are they approved? Could everybody? Sorry, I was typing.
I can raise your hands to approve the minutes, please, just so I can get it across the board.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Fine. Okay, so let's move on to matters arising not covered elsewhere in the agenda. I think I've got you all covered now. Okay, thank you. And then we move on to the Mayor's report, if we're keeping things in order, which we seem to be. So, Mayor's report. I'd like to start by thanking you all again, to all those who have been able to join us this evening. And well, what a year for a mayor. In fact, for any mayor across the country. As much as my ceremonial duties have been significantly reduced, the work in helping this town council carries out its duties and keeps on going. I'm delighted to say that around the town, changes are occurring for the better. We're in the process of agreeing plans to install dementia-friendly toilets in the old town of Beaconsfield. And due to strict COVID guidelines, we were unfortunately unable to open the toilets to the public. But after some changes, at least we could offer the availability to market traders on Tuesday morning. This involves a singular access and key holder use only. The council realised how important that market staying open was, and it also what a use it was to our parishioners. And where possible, I will always try and get up there on a Tuesday morning. It's excelled in recent months, and it's definitely worth a visit now. It's really good. The Malthouse Playground is overdue a refurb, and I'm delighted to tell you that with the hard work of our project manager and open space councillors, we will hopefully be receiving tenders in January. After the traveller incursion, emergency bunds were put in place, but they have now been replaced with landscaped bunds that have wildflower seeds planted in them, so look out for their flowering next year. As a result of the pandemic, the town hall revenue from local businesses was reduced as we tried to support tenants with reduced rental charges and rent holidays. As a result, we, and like everyone else, have to be careful on our spending. The Christmas Lights Switch On event was this year organised as a virtual event and involved individuals filming themselves, sending messages and wishing us all a Merry Christmas. There were children being interviewed by their schools and parents on what Christmas meant to them. There was singing from Kerry Layton and, of course, the Switch On event with myself and the town crier. Thank you to the team that put this together at such short notice. Therese Cooklin, editor of Beaconsfield Together, edited and condensed all the information into half an hour of fun and spirit. You can still see the Beaconsfield Town Council Switch On event on our Facebook page, or if you search on YouTube, Beaconsfield Town Council. I'd like to thank Jeanette Buckle, ensuring correct spacing and snow hurling, and my daughter Charlotte for filming me at home with some hilarious outtakes. The town crier for bursting my eardrums, and all those wonderful locals to put themselves forward virtually to support us. I'm pleased to announce the whole event cost 15 quid, and that was the supply and rent of a suit that happened to be red. Today, I was able to go around local shops and present 3 awards to the competition on window Christmas dressing. There were some delighted shop owners, and I would urge you to have a walk around Beaconsfield New Town, Old Town and Hotspur to admire the efforts put into the shop displays. Congratulations to Abstract Hair Salon, who got first prize, followed joint second by Hearn's Antiques in the Old Town and KBS in Hotspur. I was invited to switch on the Christmas lights at Sunrise Living in Beaconsfield, virtually of course, and this was convenient as had I tried to drive down there from the Old Town, it would have been somewhat difficult due to the extensive roadworks. There is a lot of overdue repairs going on around the town at the moment, and as always, it would seem the timing is not great, but hopefully the short term will mean that we have many years of safe roads that don't wreck your wheels when you drive down them. We're putting together more planning meetings now, and we're trying to get a planning meeting every 2 weeks, and this is helping greatly with the workload. And as we are now so well adjusted to Zoom meetings, we hope to resume more active calendar next year when we can bring more committee meetings back together. I've applied to join the Zoom unitary planning meeting involving the next application for building plans, Wilton Park. I just had the email this evening putting my name forward for that. And I'm asking the question as to what's happening to the unfinished link road, and I will suggest that they do not agree any contract or build unless 100% foolproof on the contract that the road is completed first and within 1 year. The road to nowhere lies dormant, and already nature is reclaiming her land. Small grass stems are appearing between the tarmac and the curbstone. Such a waste of money if it is not sorted out soon. So I'd like to take this opportunity as Mayor to wish you all Merry Christmas and a safe New Year. Thank you very much. So we move on to note the minutes of the following committees. The minutes will be presented by the chair of each committee. Bring any significant items and requests that are contained within those minutes to the attention of the council. As stepping in for Graham over the last few months, I'm happy to recommend the minutes from the 10th of September for planning, 1st of October, 12th of November, 26th of November, 3rd of December. And can I have approval of those minutes? And they're approved.
We're not approving them, we're just noting them.
Sorry, I always get that bit wrong, don't I? Noting the minutes. Thank you very much, Clark. I move on to the Resources Committee. We've got to get Councillor Pike off mute, haven't we?
You're on mute. Take it off.
Okay, the last meeting we had was on 26th of November. Just to make the comment that we listened to a report from the town clerk with regard to various improvements that had taken place at the town hall, notably fixing the roof, which was rather important. And we still have issues with regard to the stair lift, windows, and on the balcony. We noted also that the Malthouse Square temporary bund had now been replaced by a more permanent feature, and that replacement posts around the War Memorial have now been approved by the Conservation Officer. We also were involved with ongoing tenders, and I think you've already heard that the Old Town Toilets is now progressing at a pace, as it were, and we have been able to find a way around the immediate problem for the market traders. We also are working through Jeanette Buckle on tenders relative to the Malthouse Square playground, and hope to have new equipment in place before the end of the current financial year. We had approval for the certificates of lawfulness in respect of the drinking fountain and also the commemorative statue at the War Memorial. We've also been successful with a bid for just under £6,000 from localities at the Buckinghamshire Council in respect of monies that will help us with the neighbourhood planning project. And elsewhere, we are also progressing the idea of a community garden project on the site of the Ivans Road allotments. And that project will go to the community board early in the new year with a view to looking at a match funding proposal. We also discussed at that last resources meeting some of the issues in relation to speed limits within the town itself. And we are particularly concerned with Windsor End, where you have 30-mile-an-hour limit at one end and 60-mile-an-hour at the other end, which clearly is challenging. We're not overly happy at the present time with regard to the speed limit on the A40 itself between the Four Ends roundabout and Holtsborough, which has been the subject of much discussion for many years. And equally, we're concerned with the speed limits around the schools, in particular at the moment in Maxwell Road and also Ledborough Lane, where we feel that the speed limit should be brought down to 20-mile-an-hour zones, as it were. Now, what we decided at the last resources meeting was that we would put these together as a single package and discuss with the unitary authority how best to progress them. And it may well be that we also have discussions with the transport subgroup of the community board. But definitely the committee members on resources gave wholehearted approval to pursuing speed limit reductions at each of these locations. I think the only other item to mention sorry, I lost my screen for a moment. The only other item to mention was that we had an inquiry regarding purchase of land at the junction of Candlemas Lane and Candlemas Mead. And we have politely written back and said that we're not going to sell that land. And that really was the summary of the resources meeting on 26th of November.
Thank you. We move on to the Extraordinary Town Council meeting, 10th of December 2020, which is the most recent one. And there is one that we have need to note on the 26th of November 2019, which you will have approved. And if you have had a chance to note those, then please do so.
Can I just mention?
Yes, please do, Clark. I was going to...
The one from the 26th of November last year, or no, whatever date it was actually picked up in our audit that we'd had an extraordinary meeting, and because it was an extraordinary meeting rather than an ordinary meeting, I hadn't presented them to the next council. So it was on the community board consultation. So they're literally just being presented for your approval now because they didn't come before. And also the minutes of the extraordinary town council meeting was in December, was more of a resources meeting because I was tied by dates because of the audit that I needed to have the annual governance review signed off, and so it had to be an extraordinary town council meeting to properly approve those documents. But it was only about finance and audit. I don't know if Councillor Pike would want to make any comments about that. I don't know.
You're very faint, Alexa.
Sorry.
That's better.
Okay, I heard you say you'd like me to comment, but I didn't hear what you wanted me to comment about.
It was only whether or not you wanted to comment on the extraordinary meeting last week where we signed off the AGAR, because I was saying it was more of a resources meeting than a town council meeting, whether you wanted to make any comment on the audit. But we did sign off the audit, we did sign off the numbers and the governance statement at that meeting.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to add at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Pike. Okay, minutes noted. We move on to agenda number 8, roadside trees, to receive an update on the proposal for roadside trees in Sandalswood End and consider a request to apply for a cultivation licence for this project.
I'm going to push this one to Jeanette, but you all have the papers. But if Jeanette could give a short summary for those watching on the telly.
Thank you, Jeanette.
And we have Claire here who is going to answer any questions if you need to.
So about a year ago, a residents group with the support of High March approached the town council regarding plans to put some roadside trees down the south side of Sandalwood end, which was well received in principle by the Open Spaces Committee. So as well as the environmental enhancing benefits that adding trees to the roadside verge would do, it would also improve pavement and road safety in that area. So since then, the residents have raised sufficient funds to fully fund the planting of the trees and the relevant protective caging and root guards, etc. And are going to be using, or we're going to be using, our approved contractor who's done this a number of times in the past. And they would also make sure that they're watered and looked after for the first year so that the trees will thrive. So you will have the reports. So the officer recommendation is twofold. First, to submit a cultivation license to the Bucks Council to allow us to proceed and continue to then plant trees. And also to engage our contractor to do those works. Is there any questions?
Councillor.
What trees are they planning to plant?
Claire, do you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Yes, good evening to you all.
Good evening.
My name's Claire Yabsley. I've been leading a group actually on Sandalswood End, and I think there's been fantastic support with this actually. I think we were hoping to do this about a year ago, as Jeanette's saying that we've been looking at this for about a year, but unfortunately with gas improvement works down Sandalswood, and with COVID, we've had a number of delays, but since September, we've really reinvigorated this, and it's been a great community effort. We've had High March School who are very engaged with this process. The trees that we're looking at has been very much a community. Everyone sort of looked at what type of tree they'd like. We've also consulted a number of contractors to say, well, look, what type of trees can we or shouldn't we grow on the verge side, because I think this is really important. They've got to be hardy, they've got to be pretty large in terms of, they've got to be about 2.5 meters to actually survive on the verge, but also we've got to make sure that the width of them over time is not going to be detrimental either to pedestrians or either to vehicles. So the cherries, we've come to the conclusion that a cherry Prunus Sunset Boulevard interspersed with a number of rowans would be the best and most suitable for this location. And they're pretty hardy, but they will need looking after by us for about a year or so.
Yeah, and I would just add that the previous tree planting that was undertaken with 14 trees was Sunset Boulevard as well.
Yeah.
With cherry blossom without the cherries.
And I think we're very much, I think this very much supports Jeanette's initiative and the Town Council's initiative and the Beaconsfield Society initiative of Bring Back the Blossom. Because I think at the moment, when you look down Sandalswood End, we've got 13 trees which are either dead or dying. I think we've got 3 small trees which have been planted just further up beyond Asherton, but you've really got this very stark, very it gets very muddy in the winter. At the moment you'll walk down there and there's a lot of mud everywhere, and I think it will help to actually reduce the flow of water actually onto the road, so it's going to relieve the drainage systems as well.
Thank you, Claire. Any questions on this point? What is sort of any idea of timelines at the moment, Jeanette or Claire, with reference, obviously we've put the application in for the cultivation license for the project and then moving on?
Well, clearly it would be good to get support for the 2 recommendations, because the best time to plant trees is in winter when the sap is down. So if you were minded to approve this project, it would allow Claire to order the trees to plant them before the end of March.
Okay. One other thing, I remember this being brought up before, and a mention of traffic that parks for the school. Is it on that side of High March where the cars pull up on the curb? And there's a reference to the trees being quite close to the junction there as well. How have you embraced that? Or what was the outcome?
Actually, I can answer that, Jeanette. Actually, we've spoken to a number of contractors, actually, because there are some guidelines. You have to be about 3.8 metres from a main junction. Again, with the trees, you've got to make sure that the width of them, when they're fully grown, doesn't restrict visibility. So we've been working with High March as well to actually choose some of the trees which would be suitable there. We've also met, I should say here, with Mike Raven, who's the local area technician at Highways, who Mike has been involved right from the beginning. We've also been speaking to Fiona Whitlock, who's in the licensing team, just to make sure we're doing everything right. And Jeanette's been right behind us in this process.
Excellent, good. Well, I certainly like trees. So, Clark, in your hands, can we put together a motion to approve this?
So we want to know whether you will resolve to allow the town council to apply for a cultivation license. The reason being that if we're the only people that can apply for a cultivation license.
Thank you. Okay.
And so it makes sense to come from us, and that's the first resolution we're asking for.
Thank you. So I'd like to put that resolution to town councillors and have a raise of hands to those who are in favour of this project. That's a full hand raised. Sandy, is your hand raised? I apologise. I can't see. Yes, it is. Good.
And then the second part of it is whether, I'm not sure, the other one was whether we can engage our contractor to do the works once the project is ongoing, on the understanding that it will be funded by the funds raised by this group. So it's not being funded by the town council, it's being funded by the tree group. Sandalwood and tree.
Okay, thank you. So can I put that resolution to councillors as well? It's quite a headful there. So those in favour of this next move, please. Thank you.
So can you just repeat that, Alex, what we're voting for? I didn't quite hear it.
We will, that the town council will engage our contractor to do the works, and we'll pay them, but we'll pay them from the funds received by the tree group. So it won't cost us, but we need to, from the point of view of insurance and agreement with Buckinghamshire Council, this all has to come through us. So we have to employ the contractor. So do you agree to employ our contractor to do this with the funds being supplied by the roadside tree group?
Thank you, Clark. It's too much for me. Okay, those in favour, hands raised.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's all right, you're welcome. My fault. Let's move on to number 9, Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group. I would like to ask Jeanette, please, who has been tirelessly putting together this Neighbourhood Planning Steering Group. It is very new, but it is moving forward very well. It's a steering group that I've been chairing, but obviously I have to give the credit to Jeanette, who has worked incredibly hard on putting together some very powerful and educated minds, and we're slowly starting to move forward. So Jeanette, if I can hand over to you, please.
Thank you. So the neighbourhood plan for Beaconsfield has started. Headlines are Buckinghamshire Council have approved our application for the designation of the area of our neighbourhood plan, which is our parish boundary. We recruited, we had 30 expressions of interest to be on the neighbourhood plan steering group. And we now have 10 volunteers plus town council representation. So we've had a few meetings of that steering group, and we have agreed subgroups, and they are environment and design, getting around, so think transport, working and shopping, leisure and community, housing, and finally communications which encompasses community data and insight. So that last one's a bit of a mouthful, but these 6 working groups have now got maybe around 5 people at the moment on those subgroups. And the current activity now are kick-off meetings of these subgroups to identify key objectives in their area and any issues. And that is now happening as of the beginning of this week and will continue into early January. And then we will start moving on all those workflows within those areas.
Thank you very much.
And then that is it from me.
So we're pretty much having, what we'd say at the moment, steering groups, probably 2 or 3 meetings a week with some of them, because they've all now separated out. So it's getting quite busy. So thank you very much, Jeanette. Any questions on this early stage of the neighbourhood plan? Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 10. The clerk has been working tirelessly non-stop for the past week, just formulating, working with auditors, putting together the budget proposal and preset request. Alexa, can I hand over to you on this? You're on mute, by the way.
And I'm going to hand over to Alistair, unless he would like me to do that.
Okay, thanks. Has everybody got the budget proposal papers to hand? They should have come out again today with a final amendment on one of the lines. Okay, I just want to, in summary, say that the biggest challenge for us in the next 12 months is our income, because clearly the impact of what's happened in the last sort of 7 to 8 months has been quite severe on the amount of revenue that we've been able to continue to maintain with regard to town hall lettings, and also the hire of the town hall chamber, which clearly has not had any income for some time. So the big question for us is, how do we foresee things going within the next sort of 12 to 15 months, and what sort of can we really expect to happen? Our budget for town hall rent received, which are the rooms that we let out, the budget for the current year was £55,000 of income. Now, we don't know at this moment whether all of our tenants will be able to survive, because some of them literally are not able to generate any income of their own at the present time. So we've had to take a view on what we think might happen in the next year. And the difficulty we have is that we are ourselves less than 18 months, I think now, away from our own rental agreement coming to an end. So if we, for example, are unable to attract new tenants, it may well be that it will be sometime after, excuse me, after the renewal of our own lease, if that is what happens, and we don't know it will happen, but it may be that we cannot rely on the same kind of income as we have been used to until those issues are resolved. So we've taken a view that, as opposed to the £55,000 of budget this year, we feel that that would be more prudent to put in at 32,800 in the next full financial year. If it's not as bad, then great. But trying to be realistic about it, that's as good as we think it might be. Similarly, our town hall lettings, we've reduced from 10,500 to 7,500. And with one or two, excuse me, other smaller reductions and adjustments, the amount of income, assuming that we did not do anything with the precept, the amount of income that we would need would probably be somewhere in the region of about £101,000, which when added to the current precept would give us just over £500,000 worth of income in that 12-month period. Now, it's very easy to make projections about income. It's a lot harder to predict what you're going to spend, because there are, in this game, a lot of unforeseen things that can happen. However, the clerk has been proactive on a number of fronts, mainly in relation to how we look after our accounts and the employment of outside bookkeepers. We also have got some rearrangement with regard to communal services, which were showing on a line as being a recharge, but they are now more or less incorporated into rentals. So there is a saving that we can look to against that particular line. We also have been fortunate with regard to CCTV running costs, in the respect that we are no longer being charged for the monitoring service, which again has given us a fairly positive reduction in costs in that area. We also have been mindful of the fact that in the last 3 years, we have been putting away about £20,000 a year to cover the costs of devolved services, which at the moment we are getting a grant from the Buckinghamshire Council. Now, if that grant stops, then the money that we're putting away means that we will carry on providing that service without having to look for more monies. Now, because we've got already about 65,000 set aside, we took the view that we could reduce the annual reserve of £10,000. For 1 year, we will take a break from it. So we will not make any reserve in the next 12 months. So our view is that we can manage the expenditure down to the level of expected income, which would mean that our precept against a band D would work out at £64.47 per household, and that would contrast with £64.29 in the current year. So if members are prepared to accept the numbers that we've got in front of us, then our recommendation would be to leave the precept as it is now for the remaining part of the time that we're still in the existing town hall, which will take us through to end of March 2022. Do we have any questions?
I think probably our income will dip a bit lower than you said, but I think with our reserves we shouldn't have a problem. But I think our income will dip even lower than, well, the way things are looking at the moment, that they will dip lower than you said. But I say with our reserves, I can't see that's a problem.
Okay.
Just on that, Chris, I have worked it on, and we haven't lost all of our income this year. We do still have some. We are playing football when we can. People are desperate to do it. If people were able to get the vaccine, and if we were out of tier 3, 2, whatever, and COVID is gone, our hall will be open again. So I have been quite pragmatic with what we've achieved. You know, this year, the rest of this year is not going to be good on what's happened, but we're budgeting for the following year in this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I take your view, and Alistair and I have been round this loop a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that we can keep the preset. I think we're all in agreement to, to 0, and that is going to help all of us in many, well, certainly help the parishioners, which is the most important thing really at the end of the day. And obviously to maintain the council, that it can still function. And I'm pleased that we were able to put aside a bit of money to in preparation for the devolved service, but we can perhaps, if necessary, keep that running as well, if that grant is, if that money is taken from us by council, by Yintry. So can I have a raise of hands in favour of this budget proposal and the preset request? Those who are in agreement with this at this town council, please. I think that's a yes. Alexa?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for your hard work, Councillor Pike and Councillor Collins. I know it's not been at all easy.
I'm not a councillor.
So we've just been downgraded. I apologise to the clerk, to our town clerk and Councillor Pike. Thank you very much. Okay, we asked for a report from Buckinghamshire Council. Who do we have on board for that report? Anybody? I think normally Councillor Hogan or Councillor Cranmer.
We've got John here.
Councillor Reid, are you able to?
I hadn't asked him to prepare a report.
I'm sorry, I haven't actually been asked to present one.
No, and I realise that, John.
The cabinet member would have presented this.
Is that Councillor Cranmer, isn't it?
It is normally Councillor Cranmer who presents, but I haven't.
Okay, so we'll move on from that, and we'll look for a report at the next council meeting and an update. As of course you all know, we are moving into tier 3 as from Saturday, which is unfortunate news, but as a council we will endeavour to keep things ticking over as best we can in this present environment, and I'm sure on behalf of town councils we all feel the pain and suffering of some of these communities and also the businesses around Beaconsfield and Hotspur. It's very difficult. So I think we move on to the date of the next meeting.
Currently I need to do a calendar for everything, work out what we're doing.
Good.
I don't have any dates at the moment. I think it will continue on Zoom currently. Doesn't look like there's going to be any change to that in the near future, and we are still struggling to get supported for these meetings, and our workload has changed at the town council, and working offline and remotely has been quite difficult. So we will get to you with a schedule of meetings for the new year and try and do something that is achievable.
Good. Should we say sometime around middle of January, perhaps? Would that be a
yeah, I think we need to get.
I need to talk with you about it. Yes, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So I now have to ask the exclusion of members of the public. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Peter, Deborah, and Claire. And thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Shaw, are you waving goodbye? Sorry.
All right. If that's as the gavel comes down, in which case I will stop the recording. Hold on 1 second.